These things, they're kinda out of nowhere. Yeah, I'm looking at the camera, I'm looking at me, not at the camera. It's like a freaking mirror. Yo, is that guy on steroids? If you follow along, you'll know that I am on steroids. And actually there was a comment the other day on my Instagram. I put up me deadlifting and someone went down the rabbit hole that is, stop calling it steroids, you're on TRT, or maybe it was the other way around. If you're gonna say you're using TRT, you can't also say that you're using steroids. But testosterone is the parent compound of every single steroid. There are DHT derivatives, nandrolone derivatives, that's a tongue twister. And I'm stealing this from More Plates, More Dates. He has like the family tree of steroids. It all comes from testosterone, which even if you're using a hormone replacement dose, of which I am from California Hormones at 200 milligrams a week and have been since September 9th. Here's the updated pictures right here. This is what it's looked like from the beginning and towards the end. What is it, December 9th I took this picture? I was really lean that morning. I've been trying to get a little bit leaner, but no matter what you're trying to say about hormone replacement therapy, testosterone replacement therapy, it is taking steroids. Stop looking at it in the terms of freaking Barry Bonds over there. Oh, he's a steroid user. He's bad. He's bad. So everyone who uses that, wait a minute, you got it from a doctor? It's not steroids? It is, you freaking idiot.
Idiot.
That doesn't mean they're bad. They are bad when you do them the way that Barry Bonds likely did them, which is exorbitant amounts to get huge boosts in his performance and become the all-time home run leader in the MLB. And if anyone's curious about my stance on that, he's the best baseball player of all time. Is that guy on steroids? Everyone's probably seen articles like this, but this is the first time that I've rolled across one. The website is T Nation, something that I'll frequent, and this is the first time that I'll be looking at it while I am indeed using replacement therapy steroids. So I'm just gonna skip through this thing real quick. I tried not to look at it very much until I did the video so it can be, here it is, here's the reaction to it. So let's start. Here's a picture of some dude bent over with a needle in his butt. I do inject in the glute. If you inject in the quad or in the shoulder, the potential for it to hurt for a period of time after increases. I know people who do it in their shoulders exclusively and they're cool with it. I don't know very many people who have done it in their quads exclusively who don't go through any sort of PIP, post-injection pain. But the feeling of which is no worse than like a bee sting, to which you think, oh, I don't want to get stung by a bee. It's like no one really likes to do that. But as long as you know it's coming, the fear of it is gone. It's not that bad. And actually, the Semarelin, which I'm also on, is even easier. You just throw that right in next to your belly button. You use a 31 gauge needle, which is very thin. It's like a little pinch. It feels like that. Sometimes you don't even feel it. Natural are using steroids. It's a wonder about who's natural and who's not. For many, it seems to be a way to feel better about themselves, but it's not all bad. For some, it's a way to avoid falling into a marketing trap laid by fit-looking Instagram trainers looking for cash. Regardless, it's a hot topic. There's a couple of different rabbit holes I can go down with this one. Number one, it's always been a main objective of mine for when I talk about this stuff or when I've talked about it in the past, and I'll accuse people of or not using performance-enhancing drugs, and I don't want to come off as the jealous motherfucker. There's only so much I can do about that, but I can genuinely tell you that it's like, hey, just so you know, or just so I think. Because usually I have no fucking idea. I get jealous when my dog wanders over to Alexis rather than talking to me. I don't get jealous about what people are doing with their bodies and their lives. I'll just try to do that too. If I can't do it, I can't freaking do it. The falling into a marketing trap thing is very interesting at this time because we just went through the Liver King debacle where nobody can get past that. And they just throw them into the bucket that was like the 90s magazines. And in the 90s magazines, it's this giant saying, I take this protein. Rah! The difference between the Liver King and those people is that those people were fucking huge for years. A supplement company throws them a chunk of change, says, hey, can you just take a picture of this product? He's like, yeah, sure. And then that guy throws all of that product away, takes their money, runs to the hills, never hears or sees from them ever again. The Liver King, on the other hand, has a product that he holds near and dear to himself. He believes in it. I've done entire videos on that, so I won't continue there. But that's probably the biggest difference. Belief versus thanks for the money. Let's carry on because I've probably made an hour's worth of videos on that already. Proceed with caution because genetic freaks do exist. It's better to give people the benefit of the doubt, and each of the following that are about to be brought up are just that, clues. What it has featured here is one of those reverse bell curves. Statistics was one of my favorite classes in college. And this is one of the biggest things that I remember from it, is that 68% of people, or instances, if you're gonna think about every single thing to be possible, and muscle building and height and weight very much fall into this. If you were to take every single one of the 7 or 8 billion people in the world, 68% of them are going to fall into this range for the men and for the women. 68% of heights are going to fall into this range for the men and for the women. And 68% of people are going to be able to add muscle at a rate in relation to this spot for most people. Average everyday person, this is by all means the average. If you are an average person, you can add this much. There are outliers though. They are one standard deviation away from that 68%. So at which rate, you are part of about 16% of people who add muscle at a faster rate than everybody else. And on the other end of the bell curve, there are 16% of people who struggle more than the other 68% who have an easier time of building that additional muscle mass. And then there's a second standard deviation away, where now 2.2% of people are better than everybody else. Those are the 2%ers. And then there is a 0.1%er. There is that one motherfucking Ronnie Coleman out there who's going to look better than someone in the middle, maybe even someone one standard deviation closer. But this dude way over here, Ronnie Coleman's a great example. He looks better than people who could take every steroid thrown into the freaking kitchen sink, and that's just because he chose the right parents and the cards rolled out the right way for him. So that's what they mean when genetic freaks do exist. And I really much take this into consideration. It's actually where I grab my camps from. So it's like, if there's one person in a group of people who's a freak, okay, I get it. If there's 5 people in a group who are all freaks, all from the same area, it's like, okay, now we're thinking, like, why are they all like that? If you were to play the odds, that's not the way the odds work. There must be something in the water. Now we can finally get to the clues. Number 1, insta-grow muscles. This entire section right here goes into what you look like at one point versus what you look like at a point right after. So I put up in the beginning of this video a picture of myself September 9th and then December 9th actually, I believe. So about 3 months apart, and I look very different. What's the difference? Started injecting 200 milligrams of testosterone a week, cleaned up the diet, started using the Semarelin, and actually started working out much, much less. You say less, it's like, what the hell? It's like, yeah, imagine what would happen if I were actually following some sort of a regimented training program. It would be freaking out of control. With that, insta-grow muscles is the thing that I've gotten the most flack for when I make my YouTube natty or nots. You can't just look at a bunch of pictures. Well, it's the #1 clue on the tnation.com how to tell if somebody's using steroids. It's got a handful of numbers in here, but it says stuff along the lines of 24 pounds a year is something that you could do as a beginner, right? Which is what I bring up when it's like, hey, look at this person at the age of 30, now look at them at the age of 35, now look at the age of 36. They were training that entire time. What is it between 35 and 36 that made them just explode like that? Summary, if someone's gaining more than 3 pounds of muscle per month and they are not a beginner or are not regaining lost muscle from a layoff, that it's suspicious, and I have to agree. Clue number 2, mega yoke traps, necks, and delts. All right, let's do this thing, right? I mean, they're a little bit bigger than normal. Here we go. There's the traps, there's the neck, there's the delts. Come on, throw them up. What do we got? They are bigger than they've ever been, rounder than they've ever been. And while this isn't something that I would have liked to have admitted before, because it's like, okay, there's more androgen receptors in the traps and in the neck. I've always had bigger traps, I've always had bigger lats, but I have never had bigger, stronger shoulders. These things, they're kind of out of nowhere. Yeah, I'm looking at the camera, I'm looking at me, not at the camera. It's like a freaking mirror. The neck is something that I think that I got from wrestling. It's like, look at this freaking thing. Neck, thick neck, right? The summary goes, if someone has huge traps, delts that appear to be blown up like a balloon and a thick neck, it's a red flag, especially when it's a big neck without direct work. Well, I had direct work through wrestling. So if you were to have asked me 3 to 6 months ago, I would have said, I don't really look at necks or delts, but now I do look at necks and delts. Traps, not just like up here, but also like towards the middle of your back. It's like the whole trap. Clue number 3, an unnatural amount of muscle. Yeah, that's obvious. And they have that formula where it's like, hey, at 5'10", which I am 5'9", the heaviest that you could weigh at 10% body fat is 213 pounds. If you are heavier than 213 pounds, there's a good chance that you're doing that unnaturally. You've got to look to that genetic predisposition chart above, where we have standard deviations removed from the mean. And there are going to be people like Ronnie Coleman out there who can test this boundary, I would bet. And then you want to ask yourself, how many are likely to be testing that boundary? 7 or 8 billion people in the world. Where do they come from? What is it that they're doing? What do their parents look like and do? There's a lot of variables. And if we looked at the summary, if someone is at or above the theoretical limit of body weight, is a good indication of possible steroid use unless they are a rare outlier. Cool, they summed up what I had to say. Thank you, T-Nation. Number 4, roid rage or unusual behavior. Roid rage. I am the 20 or so year old version of myself right now. Up until this point, I would say that I followed the trends that I had always lived anyway. I've seen my father, actually, who is on testosterone replacement therapy. I made a video on him as well. He followed the trends that a typical 60-year-old man would follow. And at which rate, when he started using testosterone, he became a younger version of himself. And those people are more energetic, maybe they are a little bit more short-tempered, and I could see what roid rage would mean. The summary here says that someone who carries a lot of muscle and is prone to aggressive behavior could be using steroids. This clue is especially effective if you can see a significant change in this person's behavior. I 100% agree. You know what that change looks like? Optimism.
These are my points, you know?
Drive, perseverance, aggression, dominance. It exudes from them. It's almost uncanny that you even know that person as someone who they were before and then they are in the instance in which they're using whatever it is they're using. If there is something that you notice from a person, let's say my dad all of a sudden just became much more energized out of nowhere, which he has. More apt to do things such as get a dog out of nowhere, which I wouldn't have thought he would have done 3 years ago, but now he's got a dog, and now he's vacationing. And I'll notice certain things about my behavior, where I've noted that when I was in the Chipotle parking lot, I'm not just gonna let that person get away with it. They gotta know that they had done something wrong. This one is a huge indicator, now that I come to think about it. Clue number 5, pumped all the time. Legs like dicks, arms like dicks. I put this sweatshirt on. Let's take it around now. What do we got? Do I have veins in my stomach? I got veins in my freaking stomach. It's like, where are those? You see them? Yep, they gotta be there. Veins in the stomach, veins in the arms, pumped all the time, getting leaner. It has to do with, in my opinion, a higher blood viscosity through a higher red blood cell count. Not anything where it's unhealthy, because I have had my blood work checked. When you take exogenous testosterone, it's proven that you are going to tend to edge near the higher echelon of an acceptable range of RBC, which I have seen that. I know that I've read studies about people who are doing things such as equipoise, which is EQ, the horse steroid, which is supposed to really ramp up the amount of red blood cells, and then you're even supposed to go and give blood to try to release some of that. That's not standard in testosterone replacement therapy, people, to my knowledge, but yes, pumped all the time is a very real thing. And then the next one's crazy vascularity, which I think that we just covered, and I think that I can also back that up. It's not an A equals B, but it does say in areas that are normally not all that vascular, and I guess my stomach being vascular is an area that isn't all that normal, so yeah, having areas that are more vascular than like your forearms and maybe a shoulder vein might lead you down a path of thinking that they were using something. Clue number 7, visible side effects. Gyno, acne, balding, and I made my last video on that. My hair is exactly the same as it's been, so like there's nothing coming out. It's been thin my entire life. I put a product in there to make it look a little bit thicker. I used to have long hair, it was wispy and shit. My dad's hair is super thin, it's genetically thin. What I have noticed is that I've gotten a little bit of back acne. I have 0 symptoms of gyno. These things look pretty freaking good if you were to ask me. There's 0 things going on with this guy. So I would say that one's a toss-up. Could you end up losing your hair a little bit more quickly? It's like, well, how do your parents and how do your family look? But yeah, gyno might happen. That's why you look at your blood work. That's why you go through a doctor, because you can see if your estrogen's coming up, and then they can give you stuff to fix that, or maybe can give you a lesser dose or change your injection frequency. All of those things can affect the way that your body is aromatizing the testosterone. It breaks it down into very strong clues, average or weaker clues. The strongest are the rapid muscle growth and excessive muscle mass. To which extent I point to my videos where I got all the pictures of people at various points in time. It's like, look how rapidly the muscle was gained here. What changed? I don't know. Well, next time you want to say you can't just grab a bunch of pictures, it's like, well, it's probably the best freaking way, according to T Nation and what I believed anyway. Also go to like people like Greg Doucette and More Plates, More Dates, and it's the extreme come up and then the possible extreme come down. Look at the come down, because if I were to stop using TRT right now, my body is likely to be very suppressed. It has no reason. My balls are smaller. Another side effect, but that's okay because it makes your dick look bigger. That's what they have always said, and I've heard, and I've experienced the fact that my balls are, yes, smaller. Alexis doesn't like that my balls are smaller, but that doesn't affect anything other than it was an aesthetic. It's like, this sweatshirt's red. I like the color red. I like that your balls were big, but this thing isn't any warmer, softer, more or less pleasing because it is red. They're smaller. It is what it fucking is. Now, why was I talking about my balls? I don't know. Shoot. There had to have been a reason why I was talking about those things. Suppression was the reason. There's a period of time in which your body needs to get back to homeostasis. That period of time is, of course, right now different because you are giving your body testosterone. Your body doesn't have to produce any, so your balls shrink up. When you stop giving it testosterone, it's like, holy fuck, what's going on? In that period, they're thinking about producing it. You can take something like Clomid to tell them to start sooner, then they need to figure it out their own way. But if you don't do that, there's going to be a period of time where you have very little, if no testosterone being produced in your body, and you're going to shrivel up to something probably even worse than you were before you started. So pay attention to people whose physiques deflate out of nowhere, likely due to suppression, just as strong, if not stronger, of a clue for a performance-enhancing drug user. Strong clues, disproportionate neck, crazy vascularity, yeah. What is this tricky caveat? Someone could be on steroids and not show any of these clues, especially if the doses used are low. Could be due to SARMs. Athletes are using steroids without even lifting, like cyclists, and other people, because they provide recovery outside of muscle growth. A road cyclist could be on testosterone and growth hormone, still be 130 pounds. But at the very minimum, I thought that today was a good day, being Tuesday, to talk about this article, which is something that people have always seen everywhere, I have seen in the past, and now I can speak to with a little bit of perspective, given the fact that I am working with California hormones. And if you want to try that stuff out as well, free blood work. You don't need to do shit after you get the free blood work or the consultation to see what that blood work means. cahormones.com, use code Hiller at checkout. I'll write you a script across the entire country to go to a lab where they'll draw up your blood, send it into the lab, and then they'll get on the consult with the doctor and they'll talk it over with you. And if you're in California, they'll draw your blood right there and talk to you the next freaking day. That's all I have to say about that. Andrew Hiller, out.